buenas noches, hello, good evening. Welcome to Bedtime Story. And today we are going to continue with chapter 2 of the George Orwell book 1984. And if you remember, in chapter 1, Winston, our hero of the character, is living in an apartment in a futuristic world, and they have a television in the apartment, and the government can spy and can check in on everybody all the time, and they even have the thought police, so there's no privacy at all. And we finished chapter 1 with a knock on the door, and Winston had been writing in a diary, and he had been writing something against the government. He had written, "Down with Big Brother," and Big Brother is the name that they use for all their camera surveillance on the citizens. So he'd written some pretty heavy stuff about the government, and just as he was writing in his diary, there was a knock on the door. So chapter 2 begins with him opening the door. Who could it be? Have the government seen him writing in his diary? Are they going to come and arrest him? Is it the thought police? Are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. Chapter 2, The Spies. As he opened the door, Winston saw that he had left the diary open on the table. "Down with Big Brother" was written in it in letters. Anybody could read it. But it was okay. A small, sad-looking woman was standing outside. "Oh, Comrade Smith," she said in a dull little voice, "do you think you could come across and help me with my kitchen sink? The water is running away." It was Mrs. Parsons, his neighbour. She was about 30 but looked much older. Winston followed her into her new flat. These repairs happened almost daily. The Victory Mansion flats were old, built in the 1930s, and they were falling to pieces. Unless you did the repairs yourself, the party had to agree to them, and it could take up to 2 years to get a new window fitted. "Tom isn't home," Mrs. Parsons explained. The Parsons flat was bigger than Winston's and unattractive, but in a different way. Everything was broken. There were sports clothes and sports equipment all over the floor, and dirty dishes on the table. On the walls were red flags of the Young People's League and the Spies, and a full-sized poster of Big Brother. There was the usual smell of old food, but also the smell of old sweat. Oh. In another room, someone was singing to the marching music that was coming out of the telly screen. "It's the children," said Mrs. Parsons, looking in fear at the door of the other room. "They haven't been out today, and of course..." She often stopped without finishing her sentences. In the kitchen, the sink was full of dirty green water. "Of course, if Tom were home..." Mrs. Parsons started. Tom Parsons worked with Winston at the Ministry of Truth. He was a fat but active man who was unbelievably stupid and endlessly enthusiastic. He was a follower with no mind of his own, the type that the party needed even more than they needed the thought police. At 35, Tom Parsons had only just been thrown out of the Young People's League, although he had wanted to stay. Before that, he had continued in the spies for a year beyond the official age. At the ministry, he had a job which needed no intelligence, but he worked for the party every evening, organising walks and other activities. The smell of his sweat filled every room he was in, and it stayed there long after he had gone. Winston repaired the sink, taking out the unpleasant knot of hair that was stopping the water from running away. He washed his hands back in the other room. "Put your hands up!" shouted a voice. A big handsome boy of 9 was pointing a gun at him. His small sister, about 2 years younger, pointed a piece of wood. Both were dressed in pale blue, grey and red uniforms of the spies. Winston put his hands up. The look of hate on the boy's face made him feel that this wasn't quite a game. "You're a Eurasian spy!" screamed the boy. "You're a thought criminal! I'll shoot you! I'll vaporize you!" Suddenly they were both running around him shouting, "Spy! Spy! Thought criminal! Thought criminal! Spy! Spy! Thought criminal! Thought criminal!" The little girl did everything seconds after her older brother. It was frightening. The games of young, dangerous, wild animals that will soon become man-eaters. Winston could see the boy really wanted to kick or hit him, and was nearly big enough to do so. He was glad that the gun in the boy's hand was only a toy. "They wanted to see the Eurasian prisoners hung, but I'm too busy to take them, and Tom's at..." "We want to see them hang! We want to see them hang! We want to see them hang!" shouted the boy and the girl. Some Eurasian prisoners guilty of war crimes against Oceania were going to hang slowly in the park that evening. This happened every month or two and was a popular evening's entertainment. Children were often taken to see it. Winston waved goodbye to Mrs. Pearson's and walked through the door. He heard a loud bang as a bomb fell. About 20 or 30 of them were falling on London each week. Then he felt a terrible pain in the back of his neck. He turned and saw Mrs. Parsons trying to take some sharp stones from her child's hand. "Goldstein!" screamed the boy. But Winston was most shocked by the look of helpless terror on Mrs. Parsons' face. Okay, that was the end of chapter 2. So, tune in for chapter 3, which is titled The Ministry of Truth. Have a good evening, good night, sweet dreams. Bye.